We never talked about the war, my mum and me, so I was a bit surprised when she said she wanted to see an exhibition of wartime photographs. I read in the South London Press that they've a number 31 tram that takes you to North London, she explained. We haven't been able to do that since the 50s. We can call on Uncle Bill. I tried to explain that there was indeed a trolleybus, but it had been fitted out with all sorts of mechanical devices, recorded noises, even smells to make it seem like a real tram ride. But she didn't seem to want to know. And who was Uncle Bill? I knew for a fact that the family tree didn't include one of those, and he'd never been mentioned before. As we got ready to leave her neat council flat where she'd lived since moving from the house where many of us had been born, she started to hunt around. I asked if I could help, not certain that her eyesight was what it was. Just a string bag, my old one. Need it for the shopping. We were going to the Imperial War Museum, not shopping. Best not to argue though. I'd at least learnt that after my 40 years. It was barely a few bus stops to Bedlam, as the museum was still known to us. It was only in 1930 that it lost its use and name as an asylum, London's oldest and biggest. When we arrived there, Mother was purposeful and quite unfazed by the long queues. Used to it, dear, in the war. This is nothing. And given that that remark was the sum total of anything she'd ever said about the war, I was even more surprised. Normally she'd have moaned like hell to be kept in line. Very cleverly curated, of course. The exhibition was fascinating. Memorabilia piled upon memories of the sights, the voices and the sounds of the war. But it was the number 31 we aimed for. More or less straight on board, we settled down for the audio-visual total sensory experience it had promised. Tosh, said my mother. The Clippy came along. Very convincing, I thought. Mother got out her purse. One and a child to Bethnal Green, and gave the girl what looked distinctly like pre-decimal coins. Click, click went the machine clipper, and she handed me the red and green little cards. Pretty convincing they seemed as I tried hard to remember the originals. Off we trundled, screeching and lurching, bumping along, seemingly stopping at crossroads for the tram's trolley poles to be lifted across. Then Mother grabbed my hand, rather firmly, I thought, for someone of my age. And as we got up to get off, she pulled the bell string for the next stop. Now, stay close. They say there's been a lot of damage here this week, and we need to find Uncle Bill's shop and get back home before it gets dark and the sirens go. She'd obviously taken this idea of acting out events in a museum pretty seriously. Now, though, the smells were increasingly vivid, and the grating underfoot, that was clever. Masses of partly cleared up rubber and glass everywhere. And in the middle of a smoke-filled street, wasn't that a butcher's shop she was dragging me into? Say hello to Uncle Bill, she commanded. I suddenly felt about 8 years old, eyeing up this slightly portly butcher in a blood-soaked apron. He looked surprised and apprehensive at my mother. Odd for an actor, I still thought. The shop was bare. It was late in the day and the rationed meat had all gone. Mother eyed Bill and, flourishing her string bag, said firmly, "The little one's not very well and needs something to take to his nan's. I'm sending him down there out of the bombs." Bill looked rather shifty and said, "That'll be fine, Dot. Just hang on here. I'll do what I can. Have to be quick, though. Ethel will be back soon." So I had an Auntie Ethel too? In a trice, Mother's old string bag, now bulging with roughly wrapped newspaper parcels and reused brown paper bags, was thrust back in her hands. She grasped mine again, and I'm sure Bill gave her a surreptitious peck on the cheek. Very clever role play. And the goodie bag? Did everyone get one? Now then, not a word to anyone at home about this, Michael. We don't want the neighbours to know. Know what? And I'm not Michael, he's my big brother. Well, one of them. I've 4. Back on the tram, more cardboard tickets, and eventually a walk from the museum back to the flat. Confused, I put on the specially small kettle that Mother used so that she could manage with her now arthritic hands. She still cut the loaf in the old-fashioned way, though, holding it up and slicing the bread very thinly towards her body. Another wartime habit, not forgotten. She made ham sandwiches, very plain, with slices from the meat in the string bag. Only when I'd had tea did I pluck up the courage to say anything. "Who's Uncle Bill, Mum? And how did you get all that meat?" Suddenly she started, as though waking from a deep sleep. "Uncle Bill? You don't have an Uncle Bill. Don't be silly." Then, in a very diffident, almost absent voice, "The meat? It must be for Jimmy. It was the least that man could do for your brother. Now, not a word about it, mind. Don't want the neighbours gossiping. There's a war on."